Man saves an abandoned dog, unaware that it belongs to a wealthy businessman who rewards him beyond his wildest dreams. In a cold autumn alley, the wind howled like a lost soul, carrying with it the scent of damp leaves and the promise of the coming winter. Jacob Turner, a solitary mechanic, trudged home after a long day of fixing cars. His hands were stained with grease, his heart heavy with memories that felt as distant as the sun behind the thick gray clouds. Little did he know that this evening would change everything. As he turned the corner, something caught his eye. In the shadows, a small, shivering figure huddled against the brick wall. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. He stepped closer, and there it was, a scruffy dog with sad brown eyes, trembling from the cold. "Hey there, buddy," Jacob murmured, kneeling down. The dog looked up, and in that instant, something deep within Jacob stirred. He felt an unexpected connection to the trembling creature before him. "Where did you come from?" he asked softly, extending a hand. The dog sniffed cautiously, then leaned into Jacob's touch, seeking comfort. At that moment, a flood of memories rushed back. The laughter of his late wife, Sophie, echoed in his mind. They had once dreamed of having a dog together, a playful companion to fill their home with joy. But those dreams had been buried under the weight of loss. Jacob hesitated. He had always kept his heart locked away since the accident, but here was this dog, this living reminder of a love he thought he had lost. "What should I do with you?" he wondered aloud, glancing around the empty alley. The choice loomed like a shadow before him. He could take Rufus, as he would come to call him, to a shelter, or he could embrace the responsibility of caring for the dog. "What if I can't do it?" he whispered to himself, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down. As he lifted Rufus into his arms, he felt the cold metal of a collar against his fingers. He glanced down, and his heart dropped. The name tag read, Sophie. A whirlwind of emotions crashed over him. Memories he thought he had buried surged forth. Sophie's laughter, their hopes, their dreams. How is this possible, he thought, his mind racing. The world felt both familiar and foreign, as if he were caught in a dream. "What do you think, Rufus?" Jacob asked, trying to steady his thoughts. The dog wagged his tail, the small movement igniting a flicker of warmth in Jacob's chest. "Maybe you are a sign," he mused, stepping out of the alley and into the street. The chill in the air did little to dampen the fire of determination growing within him. "Maybe I can give us both another chance." With each step towards home, Jacob grappled with the memories that surfaced, threatening to drown him. "I can't replace her," he whispered, grappling with guilt. "But maybe I can honor her." The thought of caring for Rufus felt daunting. What if he failed? What if he opened his heart only to be hurt again? Yet, the dog nestled against him, a living testament to love and companionship. Arriving at his small, cluttered home, Jacob set Rufus down. The dog looked around, sniffing the air filled with scents of oil and metal. "Welcome home," Jacob said, more to himself than the dog. The room felt emptier than ever, yet the presence of Rufus filled a void he had not realized existed. Here, in this quiet space, the shadows of his past lingered, but a glimmer of hope began to emerge. As Jacob prepared a makeshift bed for Rufus, he felt a flicker of something he thought he would never feel again. Could this dog be the bridge to healing? Could Rufus help him find the courage to face his pain? The questions swirled in his mind, unanswered yet hopeful. That night, as he lay in bed with the soft sounds of Rufus settling down nearby, Jacob closed his eyes. He felt the warmth of the dog's presence and allowed himself to dream, not of the past, but of a future that might hold new beginnings. The shadows of loss were still there, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could coexist with the light of hope. As Jacob sat alone in his dimly lit garage, the soft whir of the tools around him felt like a distant echo of a life that once was. Memories of Sophie flooded his mind, each one sharper than the last. He could almost hear her laughter, feel her warmth beside him. They had dreamed of days filled with joy, walking a dog through the park, a new family member to share their lives with. Now, the only thing left was silence. The day of the accident played over and over in his mind, like a broken record. Jacob could still see the sunlight streaming through the trees as they drove, Sophie smiling beside him, her hand resting on his thigh. "We should get a dog," she had said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Imagine all the adventures we could have." But that dream shattered in an instant, leaving behind a heavy guilt that wrapped around Jacob like a cold shroud. He had been distracted, caught in a thought about their future, and it had cost him everything. "If only I had paid more attention," he muttered under his breath, clenching his fists. The weight of his loss pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. As he looked down at Rufus, who lay curled up in his corner, Jacob felt something shift within him. The dog was not just an animal. He was a reminder of the love Jacob had lost. Rufus lifted his head, sensing Jacob's turmoil, and looked up with big, soulful eyes. It was as if he understood the pain Jacob carried. "Hey, boy," Jacob said softly, kneeling beside Rufus. "I guess we both have ghosts we're dealing with." The dog wagged his tail, and for a moment, Jacob felt a flicker of warmth in his heart. With each passing day, as Jacob cared for Rufus, the memories of Sophie became less of a burden and more of a guiding light. He began to talk to Rufus about Sophie, sharing the stories that had been locked away for so long. "She loved to bake," he recalled one evening as he scratched Rufus behind the ears. "You should have seen her in the kitchen, flour everywhere, and she would dance while waiting for the cookies to bake. It was a sight." Rufus tilted his head as if he understood every word. "I miss her so much," Jacob confessed, his voice breaking. "I thought I could forget, but now it feels like she's right here with us." As he continued to bond with Rufus, Jacob found himself at a crossroads. The thought of returning the dog to a shelter nagged at him, but keeping Rufus felt like holding on to a piece of Sophie. "What do you think, boy?" Jacob asked one night, staring into the darkness outside. "Should I let you go or keep you with me? You feel like a chance to hold on to her, to start living again." In the quiet that followed, Jacob reached for the collar he had found earlier. He had been cleaning Rufus, and the sight of Sophie's name on the tag sent a rush of emotions through him. It felt like a sign, a message from Sophie herself. "You were meant to be with us, weren't you?" Jacob whispered, his heart racing at the thought. This moment of clarity washed over him, bringing with it a sense of resolve. He could not let guilt dictate his life anymore. Rufus had given him a glimpse of light in the darkness, a way to confront his feelings instead of hiding from them. As the sun began to rise the next morning, casting a golden hue over everything, Jacob stood outside with Rufus at his side. "I think I've made my decision," he said, taking a deep breath. "You're staying with me." The dog barked happily, and Jacob chuckled, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. "Let's start fresh, just you and me." He felt a warmth in his chest, a stirring of hope that he had not allowed himself to feel in a long time. Jacob Turner was ready to embrace the future, with Rufus by his side, as a reminder of love and the possibility of healing. One crisp afternoon, Jacob Turner sat in his small living room, staring at the worn-out sofa. Rufus lay curled up at his feet, a gentle reminder of the warmth he had missed for so long. Just as he began to lose himself in thoughts of the past, a sudden knock on the door pulled him back to reality. The sound echoed through the quiet space, making Rufus perk up his ears. With a hesitant sigh, Jacob stood up and walked to the door. He opened it to find a young woman standing there, her hair blowing slightly in the autumn breeze. She looked familiar, but he couldn't place her. "Hi, I'm Clara," she said, her voice a mix of nervousness and determination. "I'm looking for my dog, Rufus. He escaped during the move." Jacob's heart sank. He was just starting to feel a connection with Rufus, and now this woman was claiming him. "Rufus?" Jacob repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. "Are you sure he's yours?" "Yes," Clara replied, her eyes searching his face. "He has a collar with my name and a contact number. I've been looking for him everywhere." Jacob looked down at Rufus, who was now standing, wagging his tail as if he recognized her. The dog seemed torn between his new home and the stranger at the door. "Clara, do you know what happened to him?" Jacob asked, hoping to buy some time. Clara took a deep breath, visibly shaken. "I was moving to a new apartment, and he got scared during the chaos. I thought he was lost forever." As Clara spoke, Jacob felt a strange sense of connection. "You were close to him," he said quietly, glancing at Rufus. "I just found him a few days ago." Clara's expression softened. "He means a lot to me. He was always there for me after the accident." The word accident hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken grief. Jacob felt a pang in his chest. "The accident?" he echoed, a knot forming in his stomach. "Yes," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Sophie was my best friend." Jacob's heart raced. The name struck a chord deep within him. He stepped back slightly, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden flood of memories. "Sophie," he whispered, almost to himself. Clara nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm so sorry for your loss. I lost her too, in a way. I've been carrying this grief with me ever since." The two stood in silence, the air thick with a shared sorrow. Jacob felt anger rising inside him, mixed with the sadness. "So, you want Rufus back?" he asked, trying to keep his tone calm. Clara's eyes widened, and she took a step forward. "I do, but I can't ask you to give him up if he's found a new home with you. I just want to know he's okay." Jacob looked at Rufus, who seemed to sense the tension. The dog moved toward Clara, resting his head against her leg. Jacob's heart broke a little more. "Rufus was a part of our dreams," Jacob said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sophie and I always wanted a dog." Clara's expression changed, understanding the weight of his words. "He can still be a part of your life. You don't have to let go of everything," she said softly. Jacob felt torn. "But he was supposed to be our dog," he admitted, frustration bubbling to the surface. "Now he's a reminder of what I lost." "I understand," Clara replied, her voice filled with empathy. "But maybe he can also be a bridge to something new. We both loved Sophie. Perhaps we can share him." The idea surprised Jacob. Could he really share Rufus? The dog seemed to be a connection to both of their pasts. Clara stepped back, sensing his hesitation. "I don't want to impose. I just want what's best for him, and for you." Jacob looked at Rufus, who was now wagging his tail, caught between two worlds. He felt a wave of emotion surge through him. The thought of returning Rufus was painful, but keeping him felt like holding on to something that wasn't his anymore. "Let's talk," Jacob finally said, his heart heavy but willing to explore the path ahead. Clara nodded, her eyes hopeful. As they settled into the living room, Jacob realized that this unexpected visitor might be the key to understanding his own grief and finding a way to move forward. As the days passed, Jacob found himself spending more time with Clara. They shared moments filled with silence and unspoken understanding, each lost in their own thoughts while Rufus played at their feet. It was as if the dog acted as a bridge between their grief, connecting their hearts in ways they did not yet understand. One chilly afternoon, they sat on Jacob's porch, watching Rufus chase leaves as they danced in the wind. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Clara turned to Jacob, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and hope. "You know, I still think about Sophie every day," she admitted softly. "I miss her laugh, her smile. Sometimes it feels like I'm drowning in all of it." Jacob nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I know what you mean. Some days it's like I can hear her voice calling me. Other days it feels like a fog that won't clear." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But Rufus, he brings a little light back into my life." Clara smiled at the dog, who had now settled at their feet, panting happily. "He's a good boy. I think he's doing more than just keeping us company. He's helping us heal." Jacob looked at Clara, noticing the way her eyes sparkled with unshed tears. I never expected to feel this way when I found him. I thought taking care of a dog would just remind me of Sophie. But it's more complicated than that. He hesitated, unsure of how to express the conflict within him. Now I have to choose. Should I return Rufus to you, or keep him with me? Clara's face fell at the mention of the decision. I understand if you want to keep him. He clearly loves you. But I can't help but feel a bond with him too. He was part of my life before. Her voice trailed off, lost in memories. Part of the life we both lost, Jacob completed, his heart aching at the thought. I don't want to take him away from you, Clara, but I also feel like he's the last piece of Sophie I have left. If I let him go, it's like letting go of her. I feel the same way, Clara whispered, her voice trembling. But maybe holding on to Rufus doesn't mean we have to forget Sophie. Perhaps it's a chance for us to remember her together. Jacob looked at her, a flicker of hope igniting within him. What if we shared him? You could visit. We could take him for walks, like we used to with Sophie. Clara's expression brightened slightly. I would like that. It could be a way for us to keep her memory alive. And maybe, just maybe, we can help each other heal. The thought lingered in the air as they both considered the new path before them. It was no longer just about Rufus. It was about finding a way to move forward while honoring the past. Jacob's heart raced as he thought about his decision. So, you think it's okay for me to keep Rufus? To let him be part of my life? Clara nodded slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. Yes, I do. I think keeping him will help both of us. We can't change what happened, but we can find a way to live with it. Together. Jacob felt the weight lift slightly from his shoulders. He understood now that keeping Rufus was not just about holding on to Sophie's memory, but about opening a door to new possibilities. Then it's settled. Rufus will stay with me, he said, a sense of relief washing over him. Clara smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. I'm glad. I think he'll help us both. And who knows? Maybe we can find joy again, even if it looks different now. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jacob felt a sense of peace settle in his heart. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. With Clara and Rufus beside him, he felt ready to embrace the future, even if it was uncertain. Together, they could find a way to heal. As days turned into weeks, Jacob, Clara, and Rufus began to form a small but meaningful family. Each day brought little moments of joy, laughter, and warmth that slowly mended their broken hearts. The trio spent time together in the park, where the autumn leaves danced in the wind, reminding Jacob of the happiness he once shared with Sophie. One sunny afternoon, Clara suggested, "Why don't we take Rufus on a hike? There's a beautiful trail not too far from here." Jacob hesitated for a moment. The thought of venturing out without Sophie felt strange. Yet, as he looked at Rufus, wagging his tail in excitement, he felt a spark of hope. "All right, let's do it. I think Rufus would love it," he replied, a smile creeping onto his face. The hike was filled with laughter and playful moments. Clara told stories about her childhood adventures with Sophie, painting vivid pictures of their friendship. Jacob listened intently, feeling a mix of joy and sadness wash over him. It was as if Sophie was there with them, sharing in the fun. "Remember that time Sophie and I got lost in the woods?" Clara chuckled. "We ended up at a campsite and had to eat cold beans for dinner." Jacob laughed, picturing the two women giggling around a campfire. "I can just imagine her face," he said. "She never could handle roughing it." As they reached a clearing, Clara encouraged Jacob to take a moment to breathe in the fresh air. "Look at the view, Jacob. It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Jacob nodded, but his mind wandered. He realized that these moments were what he had missed the most since Sophie's passing. Suddenly, he felt a tug on his heart, a desire to open up more. "Yeah, it really is," he admitted. "It's nice to feel alive again." Clara turned to him with a soft expression. "You know, it's okay to let yourself feel happy. Sophie would want that for you." Jacob took a deep breath, her words resonating with him. I know, but it's hard. Sometimes I feel guilty for moving on. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, Clara reassured him. It means carrying her memory with you while also embracing new experiences. As they continued on the trail, Rufus dashed ahead, chasing after fallen leaves. Jacob watched the dog with a sense of comfort. Rufus had become more than just a reminder of Sophie. He was a bridge to a future Jacob never thought possible. Later that evening, they returned to Jacob's home, the warmth of the fireplace inviting them in. They settled onto the couch with Rufus curled at their feet. Clara looked at Jacob, her eyes filled with a mix of understanding and longing. Jacob, can I ask you something? Of course, he replied, curious. Do you think we can be more than just friends? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I mean, I know we're both dealing with our losses, but I feel a connection with you. Jacob's heart raced. He wanted to say yes, to explore this new bond, but fear held him back. I want to, Clara, but I'm still scared. It's all so new. I understand, she said gently. We can take our time. I just don't want to lose this chance. Jacob looked into Clara's eyes, seeing the hope and vulnerability there. I don't want to lose this either, he admitted. Let's see where this goes, together. As they sat in silence, the warmth of the fire wrapped around them like a cozy blanket. Jacob felt a sense of peace settle within him. With Clara and Rufus by his side, he could start to envision a future filled with love and companionship. In that moment, Jacob understood that life could be beautiful again. He realized that it was okay to let new bonds form, to allow joy back into his heart. The journey of healing had begun, and for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. As the days grew shorter and the chill of autumn deepened, Jacob and Clara found themselves sitting together more often. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety, as they both knew their growing bond was something special, yet daunting. Rufus, with his playful spirit, seemed to sense the change. He bounded between them, his tail wagging furiously, as if he could feel the weight of their emotions. One afternoon, they settled beneath a large oak tree in the park, its leaves a vibrant tapestry of yellow and orange. The sun filtered through the branches, casting warm patches of light on the ground. Jacob leaned back against the tree, pulling Clara gently beside him. Rufus lay at their feet, his head resting on Jacob's shoe, content and relaxed. Do you ever think about what Sophie would say if she saw us now? Clara asked softly, her eyes fixed on the leaves above. Jacob sighed, a mixture of pain and fondness washing over him. I think she would want me to be happy. She always believed in living life fully. He paused, glancing at Clara. But it's hard to let go of the past. Clara nodded, understanding the struggle. I feel the same way. Losing Sophie was like losing a part of myself. But I also think she would want us to find joy again. Rufus stirred, looking up at Jacob with his big, brown eyes, as if he understood every word. Jacob reached down to scratch behind the dog's ears, a smile breaking through his serious expression. You're right, Rufus. It's time for us to move forward. Clara placed her hand on Jacob's, a simple gesture that sent a rush of warmth through him. We can't erase the past, Jacob, but we can build new memories, together. Jacob looked into Clara's eyes, and for the first time, he felt hope blossom in his chest. I want that. I want to create new memories with you and Rufus. The moment hung in the air, filled with unspoken promises and possibilities. The tension that had lingered between them began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of understanding and shared grief. Just then, Rufus jumped up, chasing after a squirrel that had scurried past them. Clara laughed, her laughter ringing like music. Look at him go! He's got the spirit of adventure. Jacob chuckled, watching Rufus bound through the fallen leaves, his joy infectious. He makes it hard to be sad, doesn't he? Yes, he does, Clara replied, her eyes sparkling. He brings light into our lives, even in the darkest moments. As they watched Rufus play, Jacob felt a surge of gratitude. This dog had entered his life at a time when he thought he could never feel joy again. "Thank you for being here, Clara," he said, turning serious. "You've helped me more than you know." Clara smiled softly, her gaze steady. "We're in this together, Jacob. I'm here for you, just as you are for me." In that moment, Jacob realized how much he had been holding back. The fear of moving on, of forgetting Sophie, had kept him from truly connecting with Clara. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of release. "I want to embrace this, whatever this is between us. I don't want to hide anymore." Clara's smile widened. "Neither do I. Let's take it one step at a time." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Rufus explore and play. The world around them felt alive, filled with possibilities. Jacob's heart swelled with hope, a feeling he had not experienced in a long time. He knew that this journey of healing was just beginning, but now he felt ready to embrace it. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows on the grass, Jacob felt a sense of peace settle over him. He understood that while the past would always be a part of him, the future held promise. With Clara by his side and Rufus at their feet, he felt a new chapter unfolding, one filled with hope, love, and the chance to create a life he had once thought impossible. Share this story if you believe that love can conquer even the toughest challenges. Leave a comment about a moment when unexpected companionship changed your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.